Everyone. Hi, Carol.
No, she hears
I
now.
think you're muted. Hi, Jordy.
There we go. This is very strange. Okay.
We'll pull the whole games here.
Yeah.
Let's bring this meeting to, you are recording, right? Just start recording. All right, let's bring this meeting to order. This is the Newburyport Conservation Commission, November 19th, 2024 meeting, taking place in the boardroom at the senior center, and this meeting is being recorded. First item on the agenda, the October 1st, 2024 minutes. Anybody have any comments or question changes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Do we, Julie, I don't even remember if we went through a roll call, if we just had raised hands, did we?
You just did all,
Yeah.
it was a.
That's what I thought.
And I'll just
Okay.
make one change for Gretchen, which is that under roll call number 2, it says that planning director Amy Port was also in attendance, but it should say conservation administrator Julia Dodson and planning director Amy Port.
Okay. All right. All in favor of approving? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Do we have any Plum Island updates?
No, I do not have any Plum Island. Did you go to the MRBA meeting?
No, I didn't vote.
I wasn't here either. So, I don't have any updates.
What about the people who may or may not be selling their houses for FEMA?
That, grant from FEMA is, again, we have been technically awarded the grant by FEMA. But there's still paperwork and corrections and things that need to be done before a contract can actually be awarded. They'll come through the state, through MEMA, and then to the city, and they don't expect that all of those final details in the paperwork will get completed until possibly January. And then, it would be the legal process of transferring property ownership, and then demolition, and all the different elements would take place. But it's unlikely that the homes would actually be purchased by the city until maybe like June of 2025. So it's been a really long time, and I know that some of the homeowners have been frustrated at how long it's taken. But we will get the grant. Yeah, and a letter has gone out to the other 2 property owners. One has confirmed they're willing to sell their house. The other 2 have not yet given us final confirmation. So it may only be 1 home, or maybe 2, or maybe.
But the homeowners maintain the responsibility for and liability on the property until it's transferred, I assume.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So if there's storms or there's additional damage that happens between now and then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the winter hasn't arrived yet, so
Yeah.
it's a little stressful for some of that.
Alrighty, on to certificates, compliance, etc. First one is Andrew Cole, 95 Water Street, request for a certificate.
Okay,
of
so
compliance.
see if we have anyone there. No, if anyone is here to represent the National Grid project, please raise your hand. There's Andrew Cole. Okay, so Andrew, I'm going to promote you to panelist so that you can answer any questions that the commission might have about the 95 Water Street. Okay, but just as a summary, at the last commission meeting, we addressed the request for certificate of compliance for 95 Water Street, the National Grid project, in which they built a berm to surround the substation, and they also did some repairs and reconstruction of the seawall along the Merrimack River, and along with also some landscaping and work to repair and reconstruct an outfall. And then there were some holdups over the years with landscaping not taking, hold in this corner area up here. And many revisions were made to that landscaping, which has now been resolved, with the addition of a duckbill valve on the outfall at the Merrimack River right here. And so, at the last meeting where we addressed the certificate of compliance, the commission had questions about operation and maintenance of that outfall, who was responsible, whether there was a plan for that, et cetera. So National Grid responded by submitting, an operation and maintenance plan, which is, yes. Sorry, I can't see anything because of this. Here we go. This is the operation plan. So are there any questions from the commission about this?
So from my reading of it, they're either after an event or at least twice a year, they're gonna go out and make sure that it's there and working.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, that's correct. So our substation, this one in particular, will be entered into our stormwater management for some of the substations that have, features of this type. Spring and fall, it would be reviewed. And then in addition, there's the substation operation and maintenance crew that they would be contacted when we have those events that are, significant. And that's measured off of the gauge that's at the bridge immediately adjacent to the substation.
So this duckbill valve is not gonna solve the problem entirely, because on a high tide with the surge or whatever, the water comes into the yacht club around, which flows into that area, also into the substation. And also on the westerly side, the seawall doesn't go far enough to prevent the water from not coming. So there's two areas, it's still in flood there.
This duckbill valve is not intended to stop flooding around the wall or coming from a different property. It's intended to allow water out of that low-lying area that the commission identified as a concern that wasn't revegetated. So water coming from an adjacent property onto national grids isn't associated with this, isn't something we are able to address.
There's no mechanical parts, correct? It
No.
does talk about a flap gate down there, but isn't it just more something like this?
It's like rubberized, yeah. Yeah, basically narrow on the outlet end, and so water that pushes through, it's able to leave the valve, and as the pressure decreases, it tightens up. So it is rubberized, but it's a thick rubber. They're used across the country. I mean, it's pretty widely used on coastal areas. Not mechanical.
There's really nothing to do with it except look at it. I mean, typically.
Yeah, so the inspection is going to include visually looking at the entrance of the culvert, making sure there's not sticks, debris that are in there, basically stopping the rubber from condensing back down. That would be removed. Those kinds of observations, and if the rubber becomes cracked, years down the road kind of concept, or if the clamp that holds the rubber there is wearing, that could be replaced. That's basically what those inspections spring and fall would include. And then just, that kind of observation and replacement.
I was wondering if you're somehow documenting these inspections, or if it's in some sort of like compliance calendar or something like that, or you're.
Yeah, the sites that are enrolled in this basically are conducted by a consulting firm, licensing, permitting, basically engineering firm. So they have a spreadsheet of the sites. They have what's the requirement. Basically, I would enroll this document, and then I put the times at which they'd inspect. So spring and fall. They conduct the inspection. They take photo documentation of it, and then they report on the observation to ensure that it's documented that they've done the cleaning. And if there's more repairs, like that duckbill is cracked or there's a replacement needed, that would go to the substation operation group, and then we would get it replaced.
Okay. Anybody else? Carol, you good?
Yep, I'm good, thank you.
All right, what do we wanna do?
Can they issue the certificate of compliance? Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah. All right, thank you,
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
thanks. All right, number 2, John Eric White, City of Newburyport, Lower Artichoke Reservoir, request for certificate of compliance.
Commissioner members, how was everyone? So this was for protection of the lower Artichoke Dam. So we had to build a stone foundation in order to put sandbags on in case we get a breach. So the work itself was pretty easy. It was a stone access down to the foundation, and then we built another ramp on the other side, if you can call it the asphalt plan. Julia?
Yep.
Should be the last one. So the design's pretty basic. You have the ramp coming down, and then the stone foundation going across, and we installed another ramp to get to the other side. And this will be in place permanently as far as the ramps, so that we can get access to the other side for maintenance. Believe it or not, the dam's been there forever with no access to the other side. So we removed the tree, so the spillway itself was finished, in, mid-February. And then in March, we took down trees on the other side as part of the dam management. So the stone foundation itself had impacts to weather resource areas, but the actual construction, they steepened up the side slope, so as you can see, the toe slope is a lot less than the original design. So the impacts to the wetland resource areas were much lower. For your responsibility, the town line is actually, can you show them
Is it
Right.
right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Newburyport really only dealt with the ramp going down. So I just gave you a little update on the need of the entire system. So it included the ramp going down, and then also there's a low point. So there's hay bales, if you can follow the road back, Julia. So those are hay bales on both sides, and right a little further, right about there's a low point, and they put in some stone. Did you get those photos?
Yes, if they're part of this, were there extra photos? Cause I didn't get the extra photos. I got the ones that are part of this.
Oh, okay.
They probably don't have them, but, let's see. No, those are just the botanical
Yeah.
photos.
So what we did is, we have the same size, a little bit small, no, the same size stone as the trap rock, 4 to 6 inches. And we put it on the access drive, just because it was getting too muddy and the equipment needed it. We decided to keep it. We narrowed it up, made it 10 feet wide. It's nice and clean, and eventually over time, it's just gonna be like a stone driveway. So there's no impacts, no negative impacts to the weather resource on the downstream of the tubes. Everything was good. So everything's stabilized. That part looks good. And then the side slopes for the berm itself, which is right here. So this is loam and seed, and then this is loam and seed. And this is all, that's all stabilized, stabilized very well. And the top is a very tight gravel. We had to raise the dam because the dam itself eroded. So we just brought that back to the grade that it was supposed to be. So we're asking for a certificate of compliance. There was one incident that I wanna assure you on that was taken care of. A little bit of silt went downstream. And so West Newbury gives a cease and desist. And, incidentally, it was while I was on vacation. It's always while you're on vacation. And the people that I thought were going to take over, one person wasn't even there. So the West Newbury agent, it happened so quick, they were dumping the stone on the upstream side of the spillway. The day before, which I was also on vacation, West Newbury gave us the A-OK to proceed because the erosion controls were in place. So the contractor, the people that on our side that were there, heard proceed. We weren't supposed to proceed if there was water going over. The very couple first dumps of stone caused a little silt from the stone. And like 5 minutes later, the West Newbury Concom agent drove by. Shut us down like an hour later. And so we
Flume was
stopped,
right here.
yeah, we stopped for like, I don't know, a week or so, or no, a couple weeks.
It was at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks, because then we had to go to the next meeting. And the impact was just like a couple dump truck loads of the stone. So we had to hire, so she immediately contacted, Mesa, right?
Natural Heritage.
Natural Heritage. And, they forced us to file, what's the terminology for filing a notice, like it's kind of a notice of intent, but we had to file, open up an account, open up an investigation with them. So we had to hire Oxbow we had to hire wetland experts to go in on a rowboat and look at all the, rare species. So they're floating, plants, and they actually took pictures to see how much silt was on top of each leaf. So we got a extremely A-OK, they were totally fine. This one on the lower left is actually natural, that's the natural downstream water body. Pictures of the actual, silt aren't in this,
There aren't any pictures of the actual plume in here.
Yeah.
It didn't last for very long.
it didn't last very long at all, because we even had, see, the thing is, we had turbidity curtains. But because the water was going over, that's the problem. You can't stop the water going over, you can't, in turbidity curtains, it won't stop that. So David Ryan didn't notice that. Not from any experience, I'm just saying from, soils, I mean, I know you're into, you're in the business. Names, turbidity curtains.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So that ended up being fine, and we're here to close it out.
Two questions. Was there also something that happened, there was a storm right after we gave you the order of conditions or something?
Yeah, so,
Did that change anything?
it was, that was, wasn't that in mid-January?
It was.
Mid-January that we had the breach. And the stone, this wasn't in, it was like 2 weeks before this, because, it was so coincidental.
Yeah.
It was right there at the same time. And what happened with that is, we gave a presentation on that. I don't know if you saw the video but we gave a presentation on that. Just to assure people about what happened. And it reached equilibrium. It wasn't a massive breach. It just barely made it. It went back about 50 or 60 feet, actually about 30 or 40 feet. Everything was kept towards the spillway. And then the tide receded and went back out. It was just like an inch or two above the reservoir level. But that was the first breach that the city has documented at this location. And that's the canary, in the coal mine for why we're doing this. Yeah.
And also, I remember there was, sort of like, you know, being an emergency and everything, you had loadings you had to do and everything when this was, kind of mobilized. Has that ever happened? Have you actually used the ramp and loaded?
We haven't used it yet.
No, okay.
So that breach was actually a surprise. I don't know if any of you recall. We were shocked. Couple guys, I got the phone call from someone driving by. It was someone on a resilience committee. It was, Sarah. Sarah on a resilience committee was driving by, sent me a picture. I lived nearby. I went down. Tom Kuzic and Chris Hood were already there. They were there from, someone else made a phone call and nobody expected it. It was the unknown search. It was very interesting. But we haven't had to need it. We haven't had to use it yet. Tom Kuzic, the water treatment operator, he's putting together an O&M and, he's making it part of his emergency response plan for his work effort, and it's gonna be part of that.
And just out of curiosity, how high are the sandbags gonna be from the spillway? I mean, the dam is only, what, a foot or two?
Yeah,
above the
so, right now we have those large super sacks, and they're about, 3 feet high. We have those there now, but there's talk that we might get better technology, whatever. But it's really, there's some large 3-foot diameter tubes that you fill with water. And those could be deployed quicker and probably much easier than a backhoe lifting a sandbag. So to answer your question, it really depends on the forecasted storm. So if it's really a major hurricane, this is 3 feet below the 100-year flood. So the first thing we would do is get 3 feet of protection. That's like a no-brainer. But if it's anticipated just to be a little breach, then maybe you don't need a 3-foot. But if we have it, we'll use it, but it depends. So the exact size, for the big storms, we'll definitely use a 3-foot. Going higher is just a matter of if the forecast is a Cat 5 heading your way, then we'll do as high as we can. But we could, the highest you can go is the berm height, which is 12. So the only thing we can do is like, even 3.5 is only gonna help. But there's gonna be areas that are exactly 12 on the berm. So
the spillway's like, what is it?
the spillway's 9, sorry.
No,
These numbers are all in my head.
The
The spillway's 9, so it's 8.75, sorry for that, 8.75. So it's always, we've always been like 3 feet lower, so 3.25 feet. So we just we'll do the bags up to the berm, which is about 3 feet.
So, did you know that there were endangered species downstream?
No. So there's no endangered species here except for the bat, so we couldn't take down the trees, at certain times of year. Between October and April type of thing. But downstream, I didn't know because when we hired the time bond to the permitting, they identified the bat for our area. They may have seen downstream, but we weren't aware of it.
And is there a plan that's all on the West Newbury side, I think, to raise the berm at some point?
The dam berm?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of a concept design to raise the entire dam. And we hired Ty and Bond, it's at the concept phase. I put them on hold because we're working out a means of meeting with the state to see if they can relax the regs in light of sea level rise, a condition that we didn't ask for. If they could find because they're in the middle of rewriting their regs, and the entire WPA is being rewritten. They had one section that was rewritten, but they're also doing a new section that's climate based. So I drafted a letter for the governor. The mayor signed it. Our resiliency committee chair signed it, just for representation. And essentially said, hey, would you entertain, relaxing the, it's mostly gonna be like, BBW, filling in BBWs with water. So taking the bordering vegetated wetlands and making land in the water. And instead of replicating them, it'd be nice if we didn't have to, stuff like that, because what we wanna do is we wanna raise the water level. If they don't allow us to raise the water level, which is what that letter's all about, then we're just gonna raise the dam. We already have that design, that concept, that's the easy part. So right now, the design is raise the dam, have mechanical gates. When a storm comes, it goes up. When the storm goes away, it'll go down. I'm in favor of raising the water level, because of drought, we need more water, period. I'm in favor of that, that's just the way I am. Everyone says it's gonna be a hard sell because of the regs. But if we were to be lucky enough that they relax it, we'd raise the water level, then we don't need the mechanical part. And if we did, we could do the mechanical part up top, and that won't be needed for like 50 years. That would be a home run for us, but it's in the design phase. So we would love your support to raise the water level if we get to that point.
How many feet do you wanna raise it?
Just 4. Because we need 3 just to get to the current. But 4 gets us to the maximum level below the new Plummer Spring Bridge that's being built. We need 2 feet below that bridge. And that bridge below it is 16, 14 is the magic number. So I think it's a win-win.
Have you identified the extent of BBW that would be submerged?
No, I mean, I just did a quick, just strictly off orthos that we have, strictly off. And then knowing the area, we know the general areas where they are. I think there's more. I don't think that it's as big of an area as, I don't think it's that big of an area. There's a lot of areas alongside the reservoir that get steep real quick.
Yeah, the bank is pretty steep.
The bank is steep, really quick. So off of Plummer Spring Road, yeah, that whole area is low, absolutely. Up by Rogers, absolutely, that's all, the artichoke dairy, that's all low. But then so many places are steep that the impact to the private properties are, in my opinion, minimal. If you go 4 feet, if the existing slope is like 3 to 1, you're only going 12 feet in. So it's really not that big of a deal.
Would that put the West Newbury well, or whatever it is there on the?
So we met with them, yeah, we met with them. We had time bound to do two options. And if this is the dam, if this is the reservoir, this is the dam here, that's the river. There are wells over here. We had raised the dam, changed the configuration of the dam to go straight to their driveway and keeping the well on the high side of the dam. I call that the clean side. Then we had an option of having the dam do what it does now. It cuts in front of the well field. And the well field's on the dirty side. It can't be on the clean side because West Newbury Concom will not let them fill in that BVW. Perfect example. They won't let them fill in that BVW. That's where I would say that would be great for relaxing the regs. Because I'd rather have water on the clean side than on the dirty side. So if they get a breach, when that happens, it'll affect them sooner. Because there's nothing to block it. And that's a perfect example of the benefit of relaxing it because, this is just, this is the argument. Sea level is gonna eventually take over vegetated wetlands, and if we can take advantage of our water supply, why not? That's just my opinion. because eventually it's gonna take over. You know, the well field will eventually be seawater.
If we do nothing, it's gonna take over.
Yeah, that, their well field will eventually be brackish Merrimack River. And I would, you know, my vote is to keep it clean so that we can get a benefit out of it.
Anybody else?
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Thank you very much.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right, next one is Gary Swirling, Free Opportunity Way, request her certificate.
Thanks. Hand up.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hey, Jillian.
Hello.
Yep, so basically the plants were put in 2 years ago and now they're still alive. It's 2 years later and we'd like to complete the final COC.
Technical difficulties here, hold on a sec.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm just having trouble with, here we go. With Zoom, sorry. All right, go ahead. Sorry, Jillian.
Yep, can you hear me? Okay, so 3 Opportunity Way in Newburyport, a partial COC was issued July 5th of 2022 on the condition that certain plants were installed and we could provide proof that they survived within 2 years. I can present photos. Do you have the photos I sent in my letter?
I do, yeah, this is Millennium Engineering's, request, like, right up on the request for certificate of compliance, and as Jillian was just saying, they got a partial certificate of compliance back in 2022 for just the addition to the existing building, which was a pretty large addition. I think it was like 31,000 square feet, but they only had, well, most of it was in lawn area, and they only had about 2,500 square foot of buffer zone impact for the project, and as mitigation, they offered to do 10,000 square feet of mitigation plantings, including 34 trees and shrubs and things like that. So when they got their partial certificate 2 years ago, it was just for the building because they had yet to be able to have the time to monitor the survival of all of the plantings. So that's what this is. Am I correct on that, Jillian? Still hear me? Jillian, can you see these photos? Do I have
I'm sorry, my internet just dropped off. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, so I was just explaining to the commission about the partial and what was included in that, and that the plantings included 34 some odd trees and shrubs over 10,000 square feet of buffer zone. And that was more than what was required given the 2,500 square feet of buffer zone impact. And that these are your photos of the plantings.
Yes, those photos were taken September 20th of this year.
That's it, but, and this is the wetland buffer here.
And you went out and looked at it, Julie?
I'll zoom, yes, I went out to the site and looked at it, and the site looks really good, it looks healthy. I mean, the trees are small, and, you know, things still look, you know, like they're saplings and stuff, but everything was green and healthy and looked to be well established, so.
Do you have any questions?
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, Jody Vining, City of Newburyport.
Hey, everybody. I'm mainly gonna turn this over to Dan Robbins, DEI, our marine engineer, show you some photographs and, answer any questions about the project, which, we finished up in the summertime.
Thanks, Jordy. Again, Dan Robbins, GEI Consultants, here for the certificate of compliance on the Central Bulkhead Rehabilitation Project. So this is phase two. Phase one had addressed a portion on the western end of the facility, as well as an area around the Harbor Masters building. Those were completed, I think, back in about 2021.
2014.
2014, all right, gosh.
Time flies.
Quite a while.
Kind of do it again.
But this was the second phase of the project that included the embayment as well as the eastern bulkhead up to the Harbor Masters building, or the bridge just ahead of the Harbor Masters building. It also included a elevated curb along the boardwalk for a majority of it. So we raised that basically to so there's a concrete curb that matches the elevation of the timber benches that were there.
Let me just scroll.
Yep.
Just let me know where you want.
So this is the gray shaded area is the boardwalk, but that's also the general area that we were working within. Go on to the next page. This is just a kind of pre-construction and post-construction mirror image of each other. And so the first one was taken in October 2023. It's a little bit misleading here because there was also the park project going on, but the bulkhead portions of that project also began at almost the identical time period. And so on the left, you see just as our crane had mobilized, it mobilized in September. And then on the right, that was July of this year. We completed the work at the end of June. So just kind of summarize, the pre and post of that project. I can go on to the next one. These are a little hard to see in this image, but basically we were oversheeting the existing steel cells that were there. You'll see in the next couple of slides that there were holes in the sheets that were corroded. We were losing fill in between them. So we oversheeted them with an FRP or fiber, basically a fiberglass sheet on the outside that was driven with a vibratory hammer. And the infill between them was concrete that would allow for some infiltration into those void areas as well. This was in the middle of construction of the concrete cap. So up at the top, you can see on the upper left-hand picture, the reinforcing being installed in the concrete cap on the left-hand portion, and then the concrete has been placed on the right-hand portion. The lower center picture that's going around over by where the whaling boats are located, and this was a portion of the structure that was completed during phase one, but we elevated that concrete cap around and extended that around this portion of the structure as well. And then the upper right-hand picture here is showing the concrete cap on the eastern bulkhead. And you'll notice that we also installed as part of this was a modification that was done during the construction phase to actually add in some cleats along that length of it. Previously, when larger vessels would come in, they would just throw their lines up over the mooring piles for the floating dock, and that's how they would tie off. So we worked through the design and were able to add some cleats along that length Probably better. Yeah. Looking at the bulkhead, you can see he ended up, welding onto the, existing steel cells that were there and extending out. Installing a rebar cage within,
Right?
the annular space, driving the FRP sheets, and then ultimately infilling between them and installing a concrete cap. All of this did also require installing new mooring piles outboard. So we removed the existing mooring piles and installed new ones outboard. About 18 inches to 2 feet. And then within the embayment, we installed new member fender system. The next one.
Dan, can I ask you a quick question? Did you monitor for turbidity during the installation of those sheet piles?
We did look, we didn't use like a turbidity monitor, per se, that would be, measuring, turbidity, but we did keep an eye out for, any plumes or anything of that nature. Increased turbidity.
And just out of curiosity, what's the expected life cycle of the new sheet piles?
Yeah, being an FRP sheet, where previously you would have had, kind of continued maintenance for it with either, an anode system, underwater, or a coating system above water. The FRP sheets, are reportedly supposed to have about a 75-year life expectancy, at least out of them, with really minimal maintenance.
Which means we'll be lucky if we get 50, right? That's what the hope is.
How long does the steel last?
The steel isn't, well, Dan can speak to this, but we've arrested, the corrosion of the steel. So that all that structure that's in there with the steel cells, as well as the deck man and the tiebacks and everything, is still functioning, and we stopped that from deteriorating. So that should be actually that same length of time as well.
The FRP, is that become friable over time?
It has UV protection in it, so it really, from what I've seen, in my experience, the really early on ones were much more friable, but it's really kind of improved over the years. We very much see that. We've had the sheets, I guess, installed since 2014, and
Yeah.
They're really holding up quite well.
For like 75 years, is that nice viable time?
Don't know.
What if ice flowing downriver
Ice flow,
damages it somehow?
there really isn't, much that it can damage. It could try and pull a sheet off. They are all bolted on with a whale, that's internal. So, it really would be no different in that respect than like a steel sheet.
The other thing I might.
The concrete that's, it almost acts as like a stay in place formwork.
Yeah.
Where the concrete, behind it is really kind of the structural member here.
But ice could gouge a hole.
I guess it could.
Couldn't it? Or no.
I mean, we haven't seen that happen in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
We have had the same system in place for the past decade. And we had maybe a couple sheets pull out a little bit in this project. We bolted them back in, we secured them down. So I think the actual experience for them has shown there's been little risk of that kind of damage. And even if it does, like Dan was saying, the concrete, that's what's really the new wall. We just have this FRP skin on top of it, added protection.
And how often do we inspect, or who does the inspection of
Well, I mean, nominally, the harbor master is responsible for that, the harbor master and the harbor commission. But, the past 10 years, I mean, Dave and I, we were dealing with a lot of the steel inspections, right? And every few years, measuring thickness and the holes opening up. We won't have to do that, at least by theory, as well as, at least our limited experience so far. It's just not supposed to break down in the same way. So, you can have, the piles themselves, the mooring piles, they're gonna need recoding, annual maintenance. The harbor master's office is dealing with that. But all the other elements is, a quick visual inspection. And then if there's a minor thing like needing to resecure a sheet, that's relatively easy to perform.
The American Society of Civil Engineers typically recommends every, 5 to 6 years that water facilities be re-inspected on a routine level.
Now, are you saying that, all of the, I don't know, 50-year-old connections and so forth, are not corroding? I mean, it seems like all the members that are behind the sheeting would still be subject to tidal water and salt water and so forth.
They are, you're basically arresting and slowing down that corrosion there.
I guess usually where the corrosion occurs is isolated spots that are, that it's gonna be the low tide, so forth, so.
Right.
I guess you had to go back further. It's probably not.
Yeah, I mean, as Dave will probably remember, the thickness, when we kept measuring the thickness after decades, most of the thickness was still there.
Yeah.
The section was still there. It was just, it had thinned out in the splash zones. We had these opening up of the leak holes. So like Dave was saying, there's sort of discrete areas where you expected to see the corrosion. But that's what we've now, there is no splash zone anymore, and the leak holes have all been closed off. So, yes, there's certain.
By closed off, we extended them out, so.
Oh, yeah, leak holes are fun. Sorry, I didn't mean to apply the leak holes anymore.
One other question is, when are you gonna do the boardwalk and?
Yeah, that was my question.
And when are we gonna do the boardwalk? When are we gonna do the boardwalk?
That was the question I think the contractors were asked the most.
Yeah.
When they were out there.
I think everybody wants that.
I don't have a quick answer for that. We have, I spent about 10 years trying to pull together the money for phase 2, right? And eventually we got there. It is a multi-million-dollar project, right? I can't remember off the top of my head, $5-6 million. So, fairly heavy lift for Little Newburyport. We just did the big park expansion project, again, for another couple $1 million. The boardwalk the structure of the boardwalk appears to be in relatively good shape. There's obviously a bunch of flaking and some warping and some individual timbers that are deteriorating faster than we had expected them to. They've been there for about a quarter century. We received $75,000 from the CPA so that we can hire a consultant to do a more thorough study of what's going on with all the stringers underneath, the tar paper over them, what's happening, and to give us some very specific recommendations and guidance as to how best to address sort of partial renovation, I would say, of the boardwalk. I don't think anyone is anticipating that we're going to be rebuilding, like a full rebuild of the boardwalk in the next few years. We have, after all of our inspections, as part of this project, we've been generally assuming that maybe in 10 years, that's when we might want to be looking at actually reconstructing the boardwalk and raising it up in anticipation of sea level rise. But that will be a big complicated project, especially with all the connections into the park and the plazas and pathways and all that. All that's gonna have to be, there's gonna be a lot of edge effects. So that'll be a big project, but in the meantime, we need to figure out what we can do beyond the kind of Band-Aid approach that's been pursued recently, individual boards getting addressed, and whether there's, some sections seem clearly a little bit worse than others. We're not quite sure why. But we need, the idea is to get this consultant on board this winter to do the inspection analysis, alternatives analysis, cost estimating, and help us with the public process and help us figure out how do we kind of muddle through, how do we address it. In an ideal world, we would have kind of done it all at once, right? But I found that we don't live in an ideal world, and it would have been, I think this would have been next to impossible for us to raise the funds to both rebuild the whole boardwalk for $2 million. It cost $2 million 25 years ago when we reconstructed and extended it. So on top of the more expensive bulkhead work that took so long for us to do. So we end up, this is the way we end up doing, kind of phasing different pieces and biting off what we can chew on.
Good luck the next 10 years.
Yeah. I've been around long enough, it's like, oh, I rebuilt that boardwalk 25 years ago, now we gotta do it again.
You gotta do it before you retire.
Yeah, right.
With that, I guess the request or ask is to ultimately receive a certificate of compliance.
Okay, anybody got any more questions?
Motion to issue the certificate of compliance.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Great.
all right.
Thank you very much. Now we can wrap things up and seek our sort of final reimbursements from the federal agencies.
So Jody, I have one more question for you that's totally unrelated to this.
Oh, okay.
So I walked the entire rail trail the other day, which
Yeah.
I hadn't done for a long time.
Yeah.
So as you're headed down to the train station, and you get to the crossing at Parker Street, and then you take an immediate left.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if there was a sign there pointing you in that direction.
Right, Mass DOT's project includes signage at that point, as well as several other points, as you get to the rotary and go around it. I've been diplomatically peppering the resident engineer, when's the signage gonna be installed? Because obviously the main work has been done for quite a while. He said that it's been ordered by McKay, the state contractor, but somehow can't give me any time frame. But it's on the way, and so they're gonna install signage. And if we end up thinking that some of it, needs fine tuning, we can easily go back and address that. But the decision was to let Mass DOT do it as part of their project, and then we can follow on if we need to correct it. But I agree, that's a point where, especially for people who are unfamiliar, this is the way to go.
Okay.
Is it okay if I ask Georgie?
Sure.
Can you tell me, so I understand in the bigger picture, how the harbor master is responsible? You said the harbor master is responsible for inspecting the boardwalk, the bulkhead?
Yes.
How? Because isn't it owned by the water mass?
Well, it's the city via the harbor commission, the harbor master, have a 5-year
Was part of the lease agreement?
arrangement, right?
Okay.
To tie up and be responsible for that whole system.
Okay.
The waterfront trust, again, as we found when we were trying to do all these inspections and so forth over the years, has never had the capacity or desire to step up and do that kind of systematic review. They've always wanted to push that over onto the city. Part of that is the somewhat ambiguous language in the agreement that set up the trust. What's the city supposed to do? What's the trust supposed to do? And the long and the short of it, as at the end of the day, it really comes down to the city being responsible for back to maintain. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Show up here more often, do it.
Thanks a lot,
All
everybody.
right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
Well, I have a question about Palm Island and enforcement order or violation that we haven't gotten a hold of the landowner yet.
What was their violation?
It
again?
was a
They put a patio in
patio,
a year. Well,
it was like.
or more than that.
Yeah, I don't know when they actually put it in. Yeah, I have not heard it. I mean, I just haven't been able to get in touch with them, so. Things got all, sort of mixed up when we got kicked out of our office, because I haven't been able to get mail in or out quite as easily, because we can't get into our office, to print things and mail things, etc. So I apologize, it's on me that another letter hasn't gone out, as an enforcement yet to them.
But letters have,
Previous violation notices have gone out
and been returned.
and not been returned, just sort of disappeared. And I don't know why I didn't get one returned,
You do it with a return
when
receipt?
it was a certified mail. So it should have been returned, it could just be that it didn't get back to my office, maybe it got to City Hall, went somewhere else, but I didn't get a return receipt from them, at least not that I remember. Or a returned envelope. I'm trying to remember, to be totally honest, what was the last thing that happened with that. So, again, I apologize, it sort of filtered down to the bottom of the list once. Last few months.
Any idea when you get back to your office?
I don't know when we're gonna get back to our office, but I'm in the office on Tuesdays afternoons, if you wanna, if anyone wants to come by and see me in person. They are Tuesdays up in the mayor's conference room, but the planning office and the assessor's office and the basement, which is also where our historical files are shut down. And we don't have any information about when we don't have any information about the scope of work needed to do the remediation. We don't have any information about when it might happen, how long it might take. I don't know if anybody knows, and they're just not, providing us the details yet for whatever reason, but we just don't know. So my guess is that, and what we've been sort of told by Newburyport planning director is that we shouldn't anticipate being back in there before January. And at this point, I would say that would be surprisingly soon. Because they haven't started. I went into the office, I went into the planning office today, that looks like it did the day we left. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but, so there are some things like that have sort of fallen away a little bit, but, which I apologize on that one, it's been sort of
Well, if you wanna
neglected.
write up a letter, and I'll go out there.
Yeah, no.
I'll go out there with you and try and handle it.
And hand deliver it. I think the problem was that it was sent to them on Plum Island, but that's not where
They must be there sometime.
Yeah.
What's their, you recall where they live?
I don't recall where their home address is. I apologize. This is not,
Have we sent a letter to the home address?
sent a letter to the home address and first sent a letter to Plum Island address. And I'm not recalling whether or not that was returned to us undelivered, or we just didn't hear from it. I think probably was returned to us, and then I sent a letter to their actual whole, like their other address off of outside of Newburyport. And that's the one where I'm not sure what happened to it. It may be somewhere in City Hall, it may have been returned, and I just haven't gotten it because I haven't been in the office. So, we'll follow up. Time for it.
What's their name? It's a small town.
I know, and I don't remember their name right now. Either.
So I'm just curious, so what does the letter state, that they have to remove it?
So it's a note, we start with a violation, which is a notice of violation, and it basically says, Conservation Commission has been made aware that there is a potential violation on your property at X address. And then it describes what the potential violation is, and then it says, please contact the Newburyport Conservation Commission to schedule a time to come into a public meeting to discuss this potential violation. And so we give them the opportunity to address it before it goes to an actual enforcement order, which is a legal thing that goes on their deed and et cetera. And usually the violation notice works. And then it's a process of negotiating on something like this. They've constructed a patio out of pavers, bluestone, whatever it might be, cost them some money. Nobody wants to tear that up. It becomes a process of negotiating with them, mitigation sometimes, or just they need to tear it up. And put something else down in its place. And so we have to look back and see what was there before. Was it just sand? Did they remove vegetation? What are the actual impacts of what happened? And a lot of times we don't know, and it's really hard to say because it's a neighbor generally who highlights these violations. And in this case, it was a neighbor who called up and said, hey, my name is the patio. Yeah, they're not happy about it. And so we don't necessarily have all the information. And it's a process of going about getting that and then
And
getting
if
it
they
remedied.
sell,
Yeah,
just say, you send another one to the new owner?
yeah, the
Yeah.
new owner, maybe that the property changed hands. Yeah, so I go on the assessor's card. I send it to their address of the property initially. And then I would go on the assessor's card and find out what the home address of the owners as listed, if it's not that actual Plum Island address, which sometimes it's not, sometimes this is just a second home for somebody. And they can be hard to reach at that point if they're out of state or whatever. So, but that's why it goes certified mail. And so if it's not delivered, it should come back to our office. And that's happened in the past. And we've had to have like a police officer go and knock on the door and do the whole thing.
Well,
So it's
maybe
just like hearsay, almost,
Yeah, and
it
it's-
wasn't even that, like,
No.
no one went out there to actually.
Well,
see.
I saw
Oh, you
it, so
saw
I
it.
drove by. So when someone
Okay.
calls me like that, I will go out and
You
I'll
did,
check to make sure that's something missed out. And it is there, it's a patio.
Yeah,
We don't know what it was like before.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it shouldn't be too
Aerial
hard
photo.
to find out.
right, area photos can show.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was there, how long it was there for,
Mm.
to a certain extent.
Remember what the address was?
No.
It's on the corner of Harbor, I wanna say it's a 2 Harbor, but I can't confirm that right now.
I'll take a look at it there. All right, we got anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Carol, try and show up next time.
Well, it's the problem when I have back-to-back meetings. You know, can I say?
Oh,
That's
sure.
why we have it. That worked really well, actually.
It did.
So.
All right, bye, everybody. Happy holidays.
You too.
Yeah, happy holidays. So.
I will not be here next meeting.
You will not. You will not?
I will not.
Okay.
I won't either.
And you will not. But everybody
What's
else,
the date of the next meeting?
The third.
December third.
December 3rd.
I'll be here.
Okay. All right, so.
All right, guys.
So I was late,
That's okay.
so I wanna make sure that it's.
Always recorded.
So that I can.
Okay.
Listen to the beginning.
Okay.
I'm not throwing a,